Beep, 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 boo.
Boo, ba ba, ba ba ba, boo, ba ba. Who's the man who will speak the truth? Boo, ba ba, ba ba ba, boo, ba ba. Lone candles that burn. Who's the man who will bring light into your life? Boo, ba ba, ba ba ba, boo. Ba ba, lone candles that burn. Who's the man who digs through human excrement to present you the gems? Boo, ba ba, ba boo, ba boo, ba ba, lone candles that burn. Who's the man who kinda sometimes knows what he's talking about? Boo, ba ba, ba ba da, boo. Ba ba, lone candles that burn. Who's the man who has a scatterbrained, low IQ, and weak memory recall? Boo, ba ba, ba ba da, boo. Ba ba, lone candles that burn. Who's the man who plays games and complains that he sucks at them? Boo, ba ba, ba ba da, boo, ba ba, lone candles that burn.
Hi, welcome to Lone Candle Live. Today, we got another ReplyGuying with Lone Candle, where I tell you about conversations I have with random people on the internet. It's a genius segment. Anyways, things appear to be working, so let's get going. So, I watched a video up there somewhere, and I don't remember what it said, but I felt like I needed to make a little comment of most likely disagreement. Here's what I said. Taiwan is strategically important to Japan. If China conquers Taiwan, defending Japan against China will be more difficult. So this is a random map I found on the internet. This is Japan, for those who don't know, but Japan also comes all the way down here. This big thing is China. And this, according to China, is also China. But according to Taiwan, is Taiwan. And so, Japan actually has deep strategic interest in Taiwan. Because, of course, if China takes Taiwan, maybe China will just be like, look, I don't want to be overbearing in trade disputes or any other disputes we may have. I definitely don't want to invade you or be hegemonic or ever threaten to blockade you. But maybe China will be more aggressive. And if it does, it'll be much harder for Japan to defend itself from China when China controls Taiwan. One thing, look how close Taiwan is to Japan. It's pretty much a straight shot here. But another thing, there's a strategic concept that I don't know how incredibly valid it is, honestly, but it's out there. That you have this first island chain. It's usually talked about when thinking about the U.S. and China, and that China's access to the ocean tends to have to go through a bunch of islands. And of course, if you're trying to have some sort of military conflict, it's also relevant for trade, like blockades and stuff, it's going to be more difficult when your ships may be vulnerable, both military and economic ships may be vulnerable to people on these islands with long-range missiles or aircraft. And it's also stuff about deep water ports. Taiwan has deep water ports out here, so you could just start your subs right out here and easily get Japan. Anyways, this is not the military expert show, but I have read the military experts, so I'll also make an appeal to authority. They also confirm Taiwan is very important to Japan militarily. And so, Japan's interest in Taiwan is not simply some imperialist plot. There's real strategic defensive motive there for Japan to want Taiwan to be independent of China. All right. Right. Where was that? Now, what else did I say? Considering China for thousands of years has been an ever-expanding empire that is only stopped by force, internal or external, and China's military aggression over several islands with multiple neighbors and the potential unreliability of the U.S., Japan needs nuclear weapons to deter an aggressive China. So back on the map over here, not only is Taiwan important, but really without the U.S., Japan needs nuclear weapons because weapons of mass destruction are sort of the ultimate threatening weapon. It doesn't matter how well you can defend your island from a potential invasion or how well you can break a blockade. We ultimately, if push comes to shove, we can just destroy you because we have nuclear effing weapons. And of course, Japan's defense right now against that is, oh, well, the U.S. will nuke them if you nuke us. Which, maybe that'll happen. Maybe it won't. But I think with Trump has shown that the U.S. isn't always going to be loyal, and the U.S. loyalty could change from administration to administration. Although the U.S. has been really rough on Europe, hasn't been that rough on Japan, but it still shows that, the U.S. might change from administration to administration. Can Japan really rely on the U.S.? And if Japan really wants to guarantee that it's not completely dominated by China, it needs its own nuclear weapons. So does South Korea, by the way. There's also downsides to that, but I'm just talking as far as being able to defend against China. Yeah, and so the other point I made there was a lot of time we think about China as this nationalist country, and it is becoming that, and maybe it is that now, but historically, the current China is just a descendant of the Chinese empire. This is just what it has become. China was originally just a bunch of different states around here. Well, historically, a long time ago, there was apparently a small empire around here. That's sort of legendary, probably true. But then at some point, some other Chinese little kingdom or country, I guess probably kingdom might be more accurate, I don't know. Either way, that's not the point, came and conquered the rest and eventually made original China. But it was like just around here. And then, of course, over time, slowly expanded into this big yellow block you see today. And it did so by imperial conquest. It did so by force, military force, and colonization. And slowly making those other groups who were not Chinese, making them Chinese. And so it is an empire. It's a descendant of an empire. And throughout history, and I don't think this has changed, the empire continuously expanded. And the only thing that ever stopped China from expanding was force. Sometimes external force, like defeats, sometimes internal force, like rebellions. And it's not clear that has changed at all today. China has used its military to take land, to take maritime land. The modern China has, and still is. Mostly from small countries around over here. It also threatens some of these Japanese islands over here. And it's had military conflict with Vietnam, and these are small conflicts, and the Philippines over these islands. So they've shown they're willing to use their military to take maritime land, and Japan shouldn't just rely that China will be just satisfied once it takes Taiwan, because even if it is satisfied for one moment, next generation they may not be, and there may be just some other dispute between China and Japan that escalates rather than just we must dominate Japan. Some dispute in the future could escalate where China decides, nope, we actually do need to dominate Japan. And that'll be much more difficult if Taiwan is friendly with Japan and not a part of China. And of course, much more difficult if Japan has a nuclear backstop so that they can go weapon of mass destruction versus weapon of mass destruction if they need to. All right. That's probably enough rambling. So this is the guy who actually made the video, who I hate just calling people, there's like an insult. People go, this is just propaganda, when really, maybe someone who was originally propaganda, but the guy posting that might really believe it. So it's just kind of a nonsensical insult. Except at the same time, there is actual propaganda out there. And so I suspect this might actually be Chinese propaganda, this channel, but it might not be. Maybe there's ideological people who agree with what Chinese propaganda would say. Anyways, so they said, you're completely confused. Japan is the imperialist force, not China. And so they're really forgetting that modern China is just a descendant of the Chinese empire. It's still colonizing parts of its land. It's still putting a bunch of Uyghurs, however you pronounce the word, which my geography isn't great somewhere in this area, in essentially concentration camps and flooding them with Han Chinese, which is the most basic demographic, the most basic people of China, and basically colonizing. So they're still colonizing the lands that they have recognized. And this is imperialist force colonizing lands of people who have lived there, well, longer than the Chinese. Of course, they did that over to Tibet for a long time. So, no, Japan certainly had an empire during World War II, no doubt about it. But as far as, Japan's the imperialist force, well, no, that's not true. Right now, China is more imperialist than Japan. And going forward, no one should trust that China's going to be satisfied if you just give them Taiwan. And so Japan needs to be worried. Needs to be very worried about its self-defense. All right, so you can believe Japan is imperialist force, not China. That's not true. And so let's see what I said. Modern China is just the communist version of the Chinese Empire that has been conquering and colonizing peoples for thousands of years. That colonizing continues to this day, using Han immigration to overwhelm other areas. And if they fight back, repression, like Xinjiang. It also continues on the seas as China uses its military to take maritime territory. Without the U.S., China may be tempted to have hegemonic control of the region, limiting the sovereignty of the local countries, like Japan. If Japan doesn't want this, then it needs deterrence, like nuclear weapons. Okay, well, that was the whole conversation. So I think I mainly have just a couple points, which I will restate. One is just to point out that when Japan is helping Taiwan, that's really not Japan having imperial control over Taiwan. That is Japan defending itself at this point against a potentially aggressive China. And of course, it's helping the Taiwanese who want Japan's help, because the Taiwanese over time have really become their own people and don't want to be part of China, especially not one controlled by the communist dictatorship there. And so, when you see Japan working with Taiwan, that's not just Japan being some imperialist. That's Japan defending itself with a partner who also wants to defend itself from China. And so, secondly, and I guess this is really part of the same thing, is we got to remember the modern China is the Chinese Empire. It's the same country. It's the same structure. It's just instead of an imperial family on top with an imperial bureaucracy, you have communist leaders and a communist bureaucracy. But it's the same country. It's just different leaders. And I wouldn't trust that they won't continue their never-ending expansion if there's not something to stop them. And Japan needs to realize that, and I think they do. And that way they need to be ready to try to stop China if they are aggressive towards Japan, and that'll be much harder to do if they don't control Taiwan, because Taiwan is actually a key space strategically as well as economically, because a lot of important trade routes go by Taiwan. And additionally, Japan needs nuclear weapons, because all the defense and good technology and territorial positioning in the world won't matter if China has a strong nuclear force, which it does, and it's growing rapidly. It's both advancing technologically and in size, and Japan doesn't. And if the U.S. isn't ready to stand up to defend Japan, which maybe they will, maybe they won't, Japan probably needs its own nukes. Remember, France did not trust the U.S. France said, so if the Soviet Union nukes Paris, you're going to nuke Moscow, in which case Moscow will nuke the U.S. You're going to have your own cities obliterated for the sake of us? Well, I don't believe you. And so France got their own nukes, and Japan probably needs its own. There are other downsides to that. That'd be a whole other video to do that whole cost-benefit analysis, because there are downsides to that as far as whether the U.S. should really want Japan to have their own. But from its own narrow perspective, Japan probably needs to get nukes, and so does South Korea, and not just to deter China, but also the Soviet Union. Russia may look its eyes that way if it ever gets wrested from its ongoing Ukraine war, and as well as North Korea, who's constantly threatening with nukes, and ideally you could threaten them back with your own nukes so they know that they're obliterated if they use them. Anyways, I'm Lone Candle. Like me, comment me, love me. Mwah. End stream. Stop streaming.